Hello, friends. Today we're going to do a review of the IGS Classic Arcade Collection. This just got shadow dropped this morning. Luckily, I had some yen on my Japanese eShop account, so I only had to pay 15 bucks for it. I've played through Knights of Valor 9 Dragons and Shenjian, also known as the Gladiator. I haven't played through all the games. I've been pretty busy today, but I think I could do a pretty honest review of this. So in terms of the games it has Knights of Valor Superheroes, it has Knights of Valor Plus, Knights of Valor 2 Nine Dragons. So there's no original version of Knights of Valor, which some people don't like. Knights of Valor 9 Dragons is kind of streamlined in some ways, from what I understand. I have a very limited experience with these games. I have played them before, but I'm by no means an expert. but they have that. They have two versions of Oriental Legends, and these are like really jank beat 'em ups. They look really bad too. uh, they have Martial Masters, which is a really, really beautiful looking Taiwanese fighting game. They have Demon Front, which in some ways is better than Metal Slug just because it runs at 60 FPS. And they have Shenjian the Gladiator. So, very beat 'em up heavy. If you like IGS beat 'em ups, then they have almost all of them here. Unfortunately, there are no PGM2 games, which means that there's no Oriental Legend 2 and there's no Knights of Valor 3, which really sucks. But the thing about all these games is they're all on the PGM1, which is short for Polygame Master. That was a Taiwanese arcade board very similar to the Neo Geo and the CPS 1, 2, and 3. So I guess maybe they didn't want to do a collection. They didn't want to do an emulator for the PGM2. The problem is that I don't think that there's going to be another one, just because there's only like I think like 3 or 4 PGM2 games at the most, and two of them are just Knights of Valor twice. I think there's Knights of Valor 3, and then there's like an HD version or something. I don't know if that was on the same board. That might have been the PGM 3 actually. But either way, there's not enough games for them to make another collection. I feel like maybe they would have to price it a little less than this, and then maybe just have those two games. Everything on here is running on the same emulator, so if you're familiar with some other collections that we've gotten for retro games recently, like the Mega Man Zero collection, the Mega Man X collection, the thing about those was that it was mostly just two systems that all those games came on. Mega Man X 1 through 3 were on the Super Nintendo, and then 4, 5, and 6 were on PS1, and then 7 and 8 were on PS2. So they had to make an emulator for like just two games. The same thing with the Zero ZX Legacy collection. Like almost all of the collection is just using a really good Game Boy Advance emulator. But then they had to go the extra mile and make a DS emulator as well, which is way harder because of the dual screen. It's kind of a bummer that those games are not in here, but Knights of Valor 1 and 2 tend to be widely more popular anyway. So we're going to play a little bit of Nine Dragons because I actually just beat this game twice earlier. So some games have online and some don't. You see if it has a little world, the globe symbol there, that means it has online. Like Shenjian and Gladiator do not have online, so if you want to play those co-op, you're gonna have to either have your friend here locally in person, or I don't know, maybe you can run it through a Switch emulator or something. But at that point, you're probably better just getting the ROM. But majority of the games do have online. There also are some leaderboards as well. Like if you go in here, I'm not going to show it because it takes forever to load. But there's already some Taiwanese cyborgs playing this game and getting like crazy high scores and stuff. All right, so we're gonna play some Nine Dragons. I'm guessing it's like loading the emulator here. Okay, so there's actually some really cool things about this port. It's not just a straight ROM dump. There's actually some really nice things about this because it can be really hard to remap these games on emulator to a way that you want because they were essentially had the same layout as a Neo Geo. So like four horizontal A, B, C, and D buttons. So if you don't want to play like that, if you don't want to stretch your hand out so far, if you're on an arcade stick, they make it really easy to change it here. Like you can see, you can even use shortcuts. You can use a shortcut for blocking. You can use a shortcut for crouching as well. I don't know what these are. The translation is not the best. So I have it set up more like kind of a modern beat 'em up. I've got like the square or Y button is on attack, and then the B or the X button is on jump, and then you have the item button. You can tell that these are Taiwanese games because the items are called props. Something very common when you play like Chinese and Taiwanese games. Also, they give you a really nice move list as well. I do not know if this is complete. I'm not like a full expert on this game. The translations are pretty literate, as you can see, but they give you a move set for all the characters, which is really nice because none of that stuff is really conveyed in the game at all. Sound settings, there's not really much else here. Game archive is basically a save state, so some of the games in this collection could be on the longer side, more specifically Knights of Valor 1 and the Oriental Legend 1 games. Uh, you can beat this game in a relatively short period of time, but you do have a number of save states here, so if you want to, I don't know, try to get secrets or something, there's a lot of secrets in these games, I guess you can do that as well. Alright, so let's go ahead and play. Get their food and things, yeah. Raid the fridge. Now, I have not tested out the online. Going to assume it's probably bad. But, you know, you're on a Switch and you're on Wi-Fi as it is, so you have to factor that in. Then there's probably very few people in America playing this. So, if any of you have this game and you're in America and you want to try this online, I can probably do a separate video for that. But I don't want to ruin someone else's experience because they're all obviously in various parts of Asia, and I'm a filthy foreigner in America, California. I'm the only person in California playing this right now. I wasn't really expecting this to have as many features as it does. I thought it would just be kind of a generic ROM dump where it's like, it's nice to support the company, but you can get a better experience on emulator. Just go find the game online and play it that way. But they actually seem to have gone the extra mile. It seems to have most of the functionality you'd want on an emulator. These games also have really terrible sound and music as well. The PGM has a pretty bad sound chip, so I feel like if the sound is not accurate, I don't really think anyone would care. The music in this game is totally meme-worthy. I'm surprised it hasn't been used on like Twitter memes or something. It's really bad. You get a kick out of the boss music coming up here in a few minutes. So the original version of this game was like 2 hours long. Like a really long, grueling game. One of the hardest beat-em-ups to 1cc pretty much, just because the sheer difficulty and the length of it. But this one is streamlined in a lot of ways. I think they removed a lot of secrets, they added more moves, and they also added this beginner's path where you can like kind of get into the game, get the hang of it, and then you can do the longer path if you want. This game was very successful. This is actually one of the most successful arcade games of all time, but imagine they might have made this because people figured out how to 1cc it and they would be on the machine for like 2 hours, so... There was a cyborg in the arcade that could beat this on 1 credit. They would not get off the machine for 2 hours, so I'm sure maybe the arcade owners didn't like that or something. Listen to this boss music. This is just untapped meme potential here. It's like cursed Rugrats music. Makes me really mad. It's music. Give them one thing, it's a really long loop. You're highly unlikely to ever hear the end of that song unless you're deliberately going for it. It seems like the sound is actually pretty accurate from what I've seen. I don't know if they're using the source code or they just have this running through a ROM, but I know these games had pretty spotty emulation for a while, so I can't really vouch for that, but you heard how awful the sound and music is, so I don't think anyone will really care. I think this is worth the money. It was like, what, like 3,600 yen, so probably about maybe 32, 33 US dollars, even with markup on like Play Asia and stuff. I think it's worth the money. If you want to try these games, it's probably the most accessible way because you don't have to fight with emulators. And I have played these games on emulator before. I even have them on my phone, but I bought this just to see how good the port was. Overall, I'd say it's pretty good. It has enough functionality to be worth the money. I'd say the major downside is some of the games don't have online, and then also there's no PGM2 games, which I feel are way better than the stuff that they have on here. Like the Oriental Legend 1, it's very ugly and janky and amateurish looking. And then like Oriental Legend 2 is like this night and day improvement. It's like the difference between Streets of Rage 1 and 2 in terms of like the gameplay and the frame rate and just the overall presentation of the game. It's a shame that they don't have those. I think the problem is probably because all of these games had English translations, very similar to how the Neo Geo worked, where they would do like really crappy, like borderline machine translations in house in Japan, and then when they brought them over here to America, the translations were awful and you could barely understand what the story was. That's actually what they did here. Uh, Most of these games, almost all of them on here, I think all of them on here actually, do have translations for English built into the BIOS. But Knights of Valor 3 actually never shipped with an English translation. Oriental Legend 2 as well did have one. The English version actually completely changes the way that the game works, but it was actually never released. So I'm thinking there are probably two reasons why this game does not have Oriental Legend 2 and Knights of Valor 3 to just complete the package. I think it is because A, they don't want to make a PGM2 emulator, and B, it's because they would have to translate Knights of Valor 3 from the ground up, and none of these other games had to be retranslated at all. It's kind of a bummer, but they're also missing the original Knights of Valor 2 as well, so I'm not really sure. This could go two ways. It doesn't say Volume 1 or anything, so they could possibly put, like, OG Knights of Valor 2 and then the two PGM2 games, and maybe they could sell that for like a little bit less since it would only be like three games, but we'll see what happens. Overall, I beat Shenjian and Knights of Valor 2 Nine Dragons, and I've definitely had fun with it. Uh, it's very hard to find English resources for these games as well, so the fact that you have save states and you have a move list in here and you can remap the buttons, I think that's actually more of a benefit than you would think. I mean, that's kind of basic emulator functionality to have those things, to be honest, but it's very hard to find anybody that, like, at least streams or records stuff that speaks English that could really explain any of the stuff in these games. So at least you can look up videos online and then you can use save states and map the buttons and everything. So that's going to do it for now. I'll probably play through some of these commentated, but the only one I'm halfway decent at is Nine Dragons because I have played it before, and Shenjian is just really difficult. I don't really think I'm in a shape to really play that right now, but I hope this helps. I hope people will buy this so that maybe they'll just give us the PGM2 games, because I think those are like some of the best games they made. IGS had a very amateurish start. They put out really weird jank like Oriental Legend 1 and then Alien Challenge, bunch of stuff in between that as well. But then once Knights of Valor 1 came out, that's when they started becoming really professional. A lot of people don't know that these are like some of the most popular beat 'em ups ever made, even though most people outside of like Taiwan and China have not heard of them, and Southeast Asia as well. These games grossed a lot of money. They made a lot of money. So that's why these are being ported. It's weird that it's only available in Japan right now, but as you can see, everything is in full English. You can also change the language as well, but it automated to English just because I'm in English on the Switch. I think this is worth the money. If you have some friends, then I think this is probably going to be the most accessible way to play online instead of having to fight with emulators. I can't comment on the netcode. I imagine I'd probably be putting it to the test because I'm all the way over here in California, and probably everybody playing this is probably mostly people in like Southeast Asia, Taiwan, and Japan. So I can't really test those things, but it seems like it's all there. So maybe if any of you want to buy this and test it out, go ahead and let me know, and maybe we can set something up. Thanks for watching.